you a golfer who sways too much during the swing? If you feel it's impacting your overall speed capabilities and the consistency of you delivering the club head for a reliable strike and ball flight, then I'm going to go through some key drills on how you can improve it. Now, when we refer to swaying too much, it's important to remember that all good golf swings have sway, side to side or lateral movement that helps them actually reliably strike the ball well. However, too much sway then means we're limiting rotation and some of the other key forces in the golf swing. Now, most golfers who sway too much, in theory, are almost moving off the ball. So in their backswing, we see the head, the center of their chest, and their trail hip start to move excessively away from the ball. So this becomes too much of a lateral motion going back. And then at the top of the backswing, they're too much on their trail side and don't have the ability to be able to get back to the ball, to be able to rotate effectively. We're going to look how we can reduce that amount of sway and turn it into a much more effective loading movement in the backswing in order then sequence better in the downswing to increase that strike capabilities, the speed output, and the reliability of results. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you two different golf swings. One that is very an excessive sway going back, and then one that is what we're going to look for of how we can move that pelvis much more effectively and how this influences the pressure shift and the timing of the key forces. Okay, so when we look at these two swings, when we look at the excessive lateral motion, the very key thing to see is this giant bubble between the red and blue lines. That's naturally very much a lateral shift, so moving a long way to the right, and we can see that visually if we kind of look at my movement. If I just go back to the center, we can see visually that there's an excessive sway across this line, which then means it's hard for me to recenter at the top, it's hard for me to recenter in the downswing. And when we look at that from a pressure shift perspective, we can see in transition, I've got 85% of my pressure on my trail leg. In transition, I keep predominantly too much of that pressure in my trail side, which then normally is going to lead to me fat in the ground because my low point's too far back, not able to rotate and get my vertical forces. Whereas when we compare this to me moving my pelvis much more effectively with minimal sway, we can see how I stay very much on that line from a visual perspective. We can see how my vertical forces are much earlier in the downswing. This bubble between the lines is much, much smaller, so we're not getting that big sideways motion. And most importantly, because this is what we're going to be working on, is as I move back, I get pressure into my trail side early like I did, but as I go from mid backswing to top of backswing, you can see how that is a recentered motion, so 50-50 between left and right. You can see that's a very central turn, which now means I'm able to push into my lead side and push vertically nice and early, which is going to help get my low point forward, get my strike better, and control that face. So let's have a look at what drills we can focus on to get more of that centered turn, reduce that sway, and improve movement. So the first drill we're going to focus on is something where it's just going to give you a really good feel and a different perception of how we want that pelvis to move. So all you're going to do, take your phone, and you're going to place it in your trail hip back pocket, so the right side for me. Now imagine the screen's on, and it's shining brightly out of that pocket. Now I want you to feel and imagine you're going to get that screen to turn in the backswing to start to face the target. So if I was just to do this with a club across my chest as a feel, I'm mentally visualizing that phone light turning to the target in the top of the backswing. Now if it doesn't turn straight away, that's fine. So if you do sway a little bit in the early part of the swing, that's okay. But by the time you're halfway back, at the very least, you need to be feeling like that light is starting to flash and point towards the target, or in this case, the screen. Okay, so naturally, when I do that, you can see how the pelvis, the tailbone in essence, is rotating this way, which is getting full depth into the trail hip, which is then going to give some freedom with the upper body. Now, obviously, as a swayer, we're going to get more, that phone's going to stay pointing directly behind or even out to the right, so we can see the difference between how those two things work. So all you're going to do is take some rehearsals. I would say try and go mid backswing where you either feel like it's already started to turn, and again, if it hasn't, that's fine, but then really as you go up to the top of the backswing, you really get that phone facing target. And that, just lots of rehearsals of that. Now, for you swayers, excessive swayers, that's going to feel bizarre. It's going to feel like there's extremes amount of rotation starting to happen. And you also might start to feel that at the top, pressure's not fully on the right side. You're going to start to get a little bit into the left side. And we know from the force plate data, that's a good thing. And then once we've got a feel for that, we're just simply going to allow the cells to swing down and through. Don't go at full speed, just feel it and hit. So this is how I would want you to rehearse, is we're going to feel that turn early, feel that turn all the way to the top, and then we're going to hit through at probably quite a slower speed to just give ourselves that chance to unwind and push through the hit. Now, as again, we know from the force plate data is if we get that pressure moving in the right way in the backswing, we're now in a place to push vertically. Now, what do most amateur golfers struggle with is because their verticals are too late, normally at impact, if not in the follow-through, we then get slide this way, we lack rotation, so we're very close and get that early release, and then we can't actually rotate and jump up through the hit. So we lose all that compression. So this is really teaching how we integrate those forces by better loading. So we're going to go there, phone to target, and then hit as one motion. So when you're feeling that phone, if that's something you can feel, make sure to comment below and let me know if that's a good feeling for you or if you've got another tool that gives you the similar output. But again, it's just having that visual of how we want that pelvis to move to be able to commit to that when it matters. Now, if that drill you can't quite create the awareness around the feeling of the hip moving, you can then use your golf bag and your driver. So you're going to set your golf bag up behind you, and you've got to be careful here, but you've got to I want you to put your driver at a bit of an angle where you can get it in a position where it's somewhat hanging out and at roughly hip height. Now that's probably a little bit high, and obviously the further you have it out, the more it drops down. So you just got to play around with that. But if I was to put my right hip or my right glute specifically against the driver head cover, now in setup, either touch it at the slightest amount or be a centimetre or two away from it. And if we took the same principle of where we're going to try and push and turn, you can see straight away naturally, because my hip is doing very much this, it's obviously getting more depth, more rotation. So technically it's moving back and around. So that feeling of me touching the driver head cover is naturally going to, essentially I'm going to hit it harder. I'm going to put more pressure into it. You've still got to make sure that you don't just kind of sway off and push, but you'll be able to push it more naturally if the hip's turning back and around, okay? So that just actually gives you the same movement, but the actual feeling of what that right hip, that trail hip, is actually doing. So what I will say is, if you've liked these tips, these drills, and you're not already subscribed to channels, please, please, please do subscribe, because it means a lot, and it helps us create more content. So if you're getting plenty from this, it resonates with your swing, give the video a like and subscribe, and then go and apply it to your game and let me know how you get on. Feel, and then we try and create that into a reality.